Welcome to the latest episode of the B2B Conversations. My name is Dustin Luther. I'm here with Dun & Bradstreet, and I couldn't be more excited to have a guest on. He's a friend, he's somebody I've known for years, and really is somebody who's probably helped hundreds, if not thousands, of small business owners really understand the digital landscape better. So Gahlord, I got more of an intro here, but I wanted to welcome you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited about it. It's good to hang out with you a little bit.
Oh, I always enjoy it, and so I thought I'd give people just a quick background. For a while now, my team here at Dun & Bradstreet, we've been doing podcasts, and starting last week, we decided to test out this Facebook live stream and really try to bring these conversations to the Facebook community, as well as record these, and we'll be posting these back to our podcasts that we've been keeping up. But if you're curious, there's so many great topics that we've covered, everything from how to break into GovCon, how to improve your website's SEO, how to break into enterprise sales. Lots of good stuff for B2B kind of minded business owners. And last week we had Tim Barry, who I thought had a really great conversation. So please come back to you can look on our Facebook page. We've posted the video of that. It was really just around how do you build and optimize a business plan. But today, let's go here with Gahlord. As I mentioned, I've known Gahlord for years. And we both go back to the real estate space where at least I got my start. Gahlord, where did you end up getting your start?
Man, that's it. I started out doing graphic design work and actually in the natural foods industry was kind of where I started, and then like the internet happened. It was like packaging work, like print catalogs, that kind of stuff, which was fun and interesting. And then I got into the web happened, and the place I was working, they didn't really want to get into websites, and I'm like, I want to get into websites, so got into that, and then building them back in the go-go days when people were crazy, and then from there got into web analytics and search engine optimization and strategic aspects of web stuff. So, and real estate sort of happened along the way on that. So it's kind of a circuitous route to get to what I do today. But the upshot is I've done a lot of different things, a lot of different aspects of the marketing process on the technical side. So that's been pretty valuable for me to be able to do that stuff.
Well, of course. One of the things that I thought I have to start with, it's only because I've told, dozens of people this story and I think about it all the time. And it's something I learned from you when we were both up on stage once in Portland. I'm blanking out on the name of the event. But I remember you saying something. It was one of those nuggets of wisdom that I went, well, of course, it feels so self-evident afterwards. But, it really struck with me because of its truth. And that is, you said something along the lines of, you should really only pay attention to metrics if they're going to change your behavior.
Yeah.
And I really like that. And, there's lots of reasons I would say that, it struck with me when you said you kind of consider yourself a metrics junkie. But I've always thought of you as one. Like, how do you get in there and, measure the stuff that's important and, ignore the vast amount of noise of stuff that's not important, or at least until you need that information, right? Until you're going to act on it. So anyway, I wanted to share that nugget of wisdom because it stuck with me so much, and it's one of those things that I've always enjoyed from you.
I'm glad you like that one because it's really the one of the best things that there is to know about analytics, because there's so many different numbers you can chase, and there's every blog post will tell you here's 10 metrics you should care about and all this other stuff, and a lot of people they use metrics just to make themselves anxious, and the only way to avoid that anxiety, analytics anxiety, is to just focus on the stuff that you're gonna actually take action on. The other stuff, you're just not gonna, if you're not gonna do anything about it, then don't waste your time.
I've taken that to so many different areas too, beyond just website. I actually do it I have, some investments and things. And every time it comes back, like if I'm not going to act on it, I don't want to look at the stuff. Like unless, if it's there for, let's say, a long-term savings or something, like don't look at it daily, look at it quarterly or that kind of stuff. And I've heard it in other ways, but that logic has really rung true on so many different areas that just want to thank you for that, if nothing else.
Yeah. I'm glad that it's been helpful.
For sure. So let's start big. You kind of went into I gave a little bit of a philosophy that at least I attribute to you. Would you say you have like a philosophy around metrics and website analytics?
Yeah, and I actually think that phrase that you started with is probably at the core of it. But and it's mainly like I think about analytics for businesses. I end up doing a lot of web analytics, but I do other kinds as well. But web analytics is what I do the most of. And I think about dividing things up into this system that if any of your audience is familiar with military or military contracting might be familiar with. There's a thing called the OODA loop, which stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, Act, and it was cooked up by this kind of genius guy named Colonel John Boyd. And the way I think about analytics is how does it fit into this structure of behavior, right? So we roll it all the way back to like, don't look at the stuff that you're not going to act on. In the OODA loop, there's an act kind of moment. But analytics themselves are about observation. What are you able to observe about the world? And for web analytics in particular, it's useful to think of it as this is your only opportunity to really think about and observe what your customers are doing. Without web analytics, you can't see what they're doing. You have no idea. Your cash register will tell you what's happening, but up and everything that happens until the moment of the cash register, there's no clue. So analytics typically falls in this sort of observation zone. The next kind of realm of that, and it's not really linear, but it would take me a day to kind of really like unpack the OODA loop. But the orientation phase or moment is sort of how you put that data in context. So again, starting with the simple, don't worry about the analytics that you're not going to act on. You need to know what kinds of things are important, like what for your business, and that's that's sort of in the orientation phase. So it's and the big challenge for a lot of people is confusing what they see with what they know already, and not being open to seeing new things in the data. They're like, oh well, my business always gets good slow in August, so of course it's slow, and they don't see some other opportunity that might be there. And then at the decide phase, it's like, you need to be good at making decisions based on the data and having a comfort level of making decisions with the data. And then at the end is just having the commitment to act on whatever your decisions are. So that's sort of like the super nerdy, but that's the framework that I try to fit things in when I'm working with people. And then I encourage everyone to do is like, well, am I improving my ability to observe the world right now, through analytics? And if I'm not, then that, maybe it's not worth doing. Or am I refining my own understanding of how these numbers fit into my business, or how this information that I'm taking in fits into my business? That would be like I'm improving my ability to understand the orientation. And then am I increasing my comfort level with the decisions? So am I making my decisions based on my gut, which is very common amongst small business people? We all do it. If you're in business and you've been in business for more than 6 months, then your gut is probably leading you in the right direction, But there are times when augmenting that with data and having a deeper understanding can be more powerful. So anyway,
very much see it. Well, and I knew, having had many conversations with you, I knew you'd have this kind of interesting philosophy around just how you approach things. And I think it's important to get there. But I kind of want to also turn us now to just like putting on our business owner hats and really thinking, okay, I'm trying to get started here. What do I need to know? What do I need to do?
Right.
So what does it take really to put together a successful digital campaign?
Yeah, so there's a few things that have to be in place to really get a good digital campaign out the door and functioning well. And I'm going to start from some of the analytics corners of it, because those usually get forgotten. People are busy with all the other stuff, the creative, and should I schedule it on Hootsuite or whatever, and then they never measure it. So the first thing I like to make sure is just bare minimum, a website owner should be running some kind of analytics package on their website, typically Google Analytics, but could be whatever. You should be running something like that. If you're running a campaign, I would also strongly encourage all the links in it to be campaign tagged. And if you do a Google search for like campaign tag URL generator or whatever, there's tons of things out there to help you do that. But basically what that does is it takes whatever link you're delivering, you're distributing around the world, because all a campaign really is you're distributing links. That's all you're really, and by whatever means you're doing it, but that's what you're doing. And if you tag those links, then you can track whether they worked or not. If you don't tag the links, it's much harder. You can still kind of do it, but it's much harder. So thinking about that stuff up front, if you're able to, dumping them all in a spreadsheet is what I usually do. I make a spreadsheet that actually makes the stuff for my clients. And there's, again, if you search online, it's not like it's super secret sauce or whatever, but it's useful. But making sure your assets that you're distributing are that you can track the link from the campaign tag, and you can track what happens to the visitors from your regular web analytics. And then deciding up front, like, well, what am I really trying to do with this campaign? That's another thing I often see for beginning people, and sometimes for really advanced people too. They're like, oh yeah, of course we're going to run this, Facebook campaign on whatever. I'm like, great. How are we going to know if this worked? What's success look like? And then there's like a long silence, and you're like, okay, well, what we don't want to do is spend the budget and then decide what the measures are, because we might be wrong. Like if it's a business owner, fine, man, it's your business. But if it's the VP of marketing and the VP of marketing has to report to the CEO, you want to know ahead of time what you were trying to do. So, and that's different for every business. There's like, they're relatively the same across. There's like 5 ways to make money online, right? So, you're either generating a lead, i.e. you're getting someone's email form, or you're adding to cart, or you're getting people to see some advertising. Those are the 3 like most common of the 5 ways to make money online. And you want to know what it is you're trying to do first, and then attach your measurement to that. So if you're like, in the real estate industry, which I've done a ton of work with, or in B2B stuff, typically, again, same kind of deal. It's lead gen. You're trying to get someone, trying to shake hands with someone, really. Like if you think all the way, think past the email to, I make money when I shake hands. Maybe the email isn't the best way to get to that. So it's it's another side conversation, I guess. But figure out what it is you're trying to do. If you're trying to get to shake hands, then where's the spot where you can measure that? Well, when they give us an email, we've got a better chance of shaking hands, so we'll measure that. And some of the technical stuff gets forgotten almost all the time. Like people have a lead gen form, but it won't have a thank you page, right? So they'll fill out the form, but we don't know. We get analytics, Google Analytics in the default setting needs to have a URL to track, like the thank you for registering at the blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
If you don't have that because your designer thinks it's cool to not have those pages, you don't know if they're filling them out. And you can put code in to like fake a page and all this other stuff, but it's like you end up doing a lot of extra work. And whoever that is filled out the form, did the thing you wanted them to do, and they gave you something. And that's like, you could just say thank you and then have a boring page and be done. Or you could say, thanks, I know that you registered for this, so here's 3 other things that are valuable to you, or whatever. There's ways you can continue that relationship.
Exactly.
Especially if you're thinking about it towards getting a handshake. Like if that's where you're really going, like in a B2B sense, it's often, we're going to shake hands before the money happens.
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah, I don't know. That's like long-winded of me, I guess, in response. But those are some of the things those are the things I would layer on to all the things we already know. Come up with some good headlines, get some good art, do 2 or 3 variations and test the differences. That kind of stuff for a campaign, to get a campaign out the door. That's sort of the table stakes. But if you really want to know whether it worked or not, you got to measure it.
So I do have a kind of a related question. Can you think of like tell me of a campaign that has worked really well for you recently? Like, was there something you were doing, you were working on that you went, wow, that worked, and here was the little nugget that I think made the difference?
Yeah. So let me think about. There's a couple. I want to think about something that would be replicable.
Well, even if it's not, sometimes there's a little insight. Somebody go, oh, I see how I could apply that to my business. Those kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a tactic that I use continuously. And if your audience is primarily B2B, they might find this interesting. In Google Analytics, you can track the network domain of your visitors. So like the ISP, for example. Now, if someone's logging in from the coffee shop, but it's going to show up as Comcast or something like that, that might not be very helpful. But if they're from IBM and they're on the IBM campus and they're logged in and they're coming in from IBM, you're going to see that in your analytics. And so for people who are interested in like account-based marketing or target account marketing, or or if you're B2B and you realize that actually I can't serve every business in the country, there's really only 500. Like my entire market really is 500, companies, or whatever that finite list is. You can start to target things based on that. So for example, not only can I see them in Google Analytics if they're, and it's not everybody, but it's a lot of them. If it's a big enough company to have their own IT department that probably has their own like network hosts that you can track in analytics. So if I take that on one hand and the sort of the receiving data side of things, and then also think about placement of ads within AdWords. So I'll talk about AdWords on this one in particular. So in AdWords, you can geographically limit where your ads show. So I could choose to run an ad all over the entire US, and anybody who sees it might click on it. Or I can choose to run an ad within 1 kilometer of the IT headquarters, or the headquarters of the company that I actually care about. And I can find their addresses because it's a hassle, but it could be found. And now I can run ads only within 1 kilometer of those headquarters. So my ad spend now, I don't get anybody clicking on it. I just get the people that are while they're at work for the company that I want to work for. And then I can also track on the other side. I could track from Analytics or from Google AdWords, did they click on these ads and so on. But on the other side, I can see, are people from my target list showing up? Is this working to generate traffic from my actual target list? And this helps stretch AdWords budgets like immensely.
It's interesting, yeah.
Instead of getting every single person on earth that's interested in SQL, because that's a lot of people, and they're at companies that aren't, going to be my client's company. They're just not going to be work for my client. But instead, it's like it's all dialed in within a kilometer or a mile or so of the headquarters. At that point, and it's tricky. What's tricky with running a campaign like that is wrapping your head around the idea of low volume is okay, because normally we look at everything like, oh, I need to generate lots of traffic, and so this is sort of a technique, and this has worked for years. It's not even like, I do this all the time.
Exactly.
The hard part is just wrapping your head around. We're not trying to get the most traffic. We're trying to get just the right traffic. And so you end up spending like significantly less on your ad spend. And you start, instead of worrying about how many visits did I get and stuff like that, you start worrying about, am I getting people that are on my target account list? And, like what percent, if my target account list is 1,000 companies, what percent of them have been to my website in the last month? And that starts to become the metric that you chase instead of just raw volume. Chasing raw volume rarely makes sense unless you have a large consumer kind of approach to things. Like if you're selling shoes or something like that, raw traffic probably maps pretty well. And definitely if you're selling media, if you're a media company, you're selling advertising, then the number of eyeballs has an influence. But if you're selling handshakes to people,
No, and I think for a lot of small business owners and just people getting started, that logic of like, where do you go get those key, exactly. customers and really identifying them and all that stuff. It's conversations we have around Dun & Bradstreet all the time.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, and for Main Street businesses too, like for the small businesses that are like running a clothing shop or a coffee shop in a town, this idea is also applicable. You could say, like, I live in Burlington, Vermont, and I could, if I run a coffee shop or a restaurant or something like that in town, I can run ads just around my town, or for those other, like anyone else who's like who considers themselves a local business where they really do need people to come into the store. You can also run for stuff around just your own geography, but you could also know, like, well, I live in Burlington. I know that people visit Burlington from Montreal or from Boston. I can run a special campaign that's, just running in Montreal about, the exchange of the Canadian dollar, or we have lots of businesses that speak French, so it's awesome to come here, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So for local businesses can apply this same tactic in a slightly different way, just thinking about geography, because we always forget it. It's like, oh, it's a World Wide Web. We can do anything with anyone in the world. But the truth is, only very few companies can do anything with anyone in the world. Many small businesses would go out of business if they had to ship to Europe all the time, because it's a hassle.
Yep.
They'll say they can do it, but it might not be very profitable. So thinking about geography, and for the B2B people, marrying geography to your target account list if you're pursuing that approach, which I'm a big fan of the target accounts, because it keeps you focused on the stuff that matters.
Oh, for sure. And as I said, it's those conversations we have all the time. It's you're talking, it makes a ton of sense. So I thought I would. One of the things I know we've had some interesting conversations in the past about is really around kind of how you derive SEO benefits from like these kind of thought leadership campaigns and whatnot. And I guess I'd be curious, what are some of the ways that a small business owner can really benefit from those things?
Yeah, so if you're going to pursue thought leadership campaigns, and thought leadership is like such a vague kind of like crazy term, but if you're going to write stuff that's smart, right?
Yeah. And
some people have a hard time even just kind of they're like, oh, well, does that mean I need to write about the cutting edge and stuff? And for some people that makes sense. Usually the thing that I find that's consistent across all people that are genuinely thought leaders, and not just like gurus that someone decided was a thought leader, but people who last more than 6 months in the world of thought leadership, is clarity. Like people who are really good at being clear about something. So you don't have to be doing the initial primary research. You just have to be good at making things clear for other people, right? Mm-hmm. The thought leadership, sometimes it's about original thought, and it's great when it is, but it could just as well be, and probably more importantly, be about making original thought clear to other people, and whatever the domain of your business is. So that's sort of step one, is you have to actually be a thought leader, right? You can't just write some stuff and put it out there. And there's certain things, and thought leaders rarely are going to be mimicking the popular style of whatever's going on out there. That's another sort of deal. So like for years, it was like the 5 best things or whatever. Not a lot of thought leaders did 5 best things articles. It's just the way it is, because the 5 best things was like, this is how you bang it out quick and fast, and it's useful, but it's not necessarily going to be thought leadery there. You're not going to like make something clear. You might make something useful. And if we were to relate this in some ways, if we were to relate this to the OODA loop idea that I began with, right? There's content that's about 5 best things. That's usually that's helping you with action. Here's 5 things you can do right now, today, drop everything, whatever. That's talking about action. Thought leaders are going to be talking about how do you make better decisions? How do you understand your unconscious bias in the orient phase, so that you can fix for that, so that you aren't making decisions that are railroad you into a problem later. So thought leaders are making content around that. So once you have the content, which is really the hard part, then it's just a matter of sharing that stuff. So in SEO, SEO nerds will talk about things like backlinks, which I think usually gets people walking down the wrong path. It's better to think of it as like you're sharing your link with the world. Let's not worry about the backlink side of it. That happens, but think about where's the right place to share it. Where's it likely to get traction? That kind of thing. And the truth is, like, everywhere possible. But the nature that it gets shared, like if you've got a Twitter account that all it does is automatically post your stuff from your blog, that's probably not going to be a thought leader like location for stuff. You should do it because you're already doing it. Why not? It's like a replacement for the old RSS feed. But you want to be conversational with it, when you share it with people, to let them know, well, this is what's important about this article, or this is the nugget. The other thing is to genuinely participate in a scene, and that isn't done as often today. So it's kind of an interesting thing to watch. Like back, Dustin, when you and I were first kind of like cutting our teeth on all this, like there was a genuine blogging community, and people would comment, and it wouldn't happen in a secret Facebook group, and there was actual community happening.
There was a public discussion for sure.
Yeah, and it was interesting and useful. That really isn't the case so much anymore. So it's much harder to develop that. But if you want to be a thought leader, you still need that.
You know,
You
it's
still,
interesting you say that, because as you're talking, I've been thinking a lot about some of those things that,
yeah,
we talk about. How do you create a community around stuff? How do you kind of
yeah,
be interested in a topic,
right,
as opposed to needing to be, the argument I used to have in the talk was the interested versus interesting, right? Like, how do you go out there
yeah,
and just make sure you're interested in something and it shows, right? If
yeah,
you're just trying to be the most interesting person on the block, that
yeah,
rarely gets you very far from a thought leadership
right.
perspective.
Definitely not. I mean, it might get you somewhere in celebrity, but it's just a different approach,
Yeah.
So if you want to be the most interesting person, it's a totally valid and valuable approach, but it's not the same as being a thought leader. And it's not going to get you the same kind of benefits. They're both going to be useful, but in different ways. And I think the interested versus interesting is important, particularly in the aspect of like community, because you want to be. Other people need to talk about your stuff ultimately, like that. Like it can't just be you broadcasting.
Yep.
And the only like the best way to get that is developing community in which there are the feelings of social obligation. Where it's like, hey, my friend Dustin's doing this cool thing. I'm going to tell people about it. And being a little bit selfless about that.
Yep.
So it's depending on how if you're. I like to think I'm a nice guy, so it's like altruistic. My friend's doing a cool thing, I'm going to tell other people about it. But you could also be like an evil marketer. If you want to be an evil marketer, you could say, yeah, I'm going to promote these guys' stuff so they promote my stuff. It doesn't really matter whether you're good or evil. It's not a morality thing. It's just, the thing to remember is that it's by you taking an interest, other people you're going to get on their radar.
Yep.
Like, remember, oh, this is that guy that did this thing. And again, on a thought leader side, your ideas and the thoughts with which you are leading exist in some kind of landscape, some kind of thinking and conceptual landscape, and you're going to want to promote the other ideas that are also happening in that topography. So,
I think
that's just being engaged in that way, and it's a totally different approach from like every time I tweet a link to my blog. It's not the same thing. And it's hard work.
I'm totally with you. So, Gahlord,
Yeah.
I think that we could talk for hours. I think we have before. But I wanted to keep it somewhat short here to a half an hour, just so we can, share this around, and I can always have you back on and, dive into other topics. And I know it'd be good stuff. But so before we close out, though, I want people to know how to reach you.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's probably the best way to get me. I'm on Twitter a lot, so you can always ping me on Twitter at Gahlord. I also have a website, thoughtfaucet.com, which has lots of old blog posts because I haven't updated it. I'm like, the guilty of updating once or twice a year because I'm busy doing other fun stuff. And then LinkedIn is I actually like using LinkedIn a lot for businessy stuff. So, and I always joke, I've got the best LinkedIn profile of anybody you know. If you want to see it, anyone's looking for an example of the best LinkedIn ever, it's mine. No, I mean, it's a pretty good one anyway. But those are three ways you can get a hold of me.
No, I'm right there. And for others wanting to follow along, obviously, if you're watching this live on Facebook, you can, we got a Facebook page there at D&B B2B. We're also quite active on Twitter. And we talked a lot about data earlier. One of the accounts we manage is our Hoover's accounts here at Dun & Bradstreet. So Hoover's is one of our companies. Tons of data. You can find a lot of things you were even saying you like to do. There are Hoover's solutions for a lot of those things. So people looking to dive in and get more information there, definitely consider checking out some of those products and whatnot. And you can also, if you have any questions, you can always just call 800-701-7168. That's the Dun & Bradstreet number. Somebody will dive in and do, whatever can be helpful. So I also wanted to let anyone know that, please, if you have any comments, we're going to be posting this video up on our Facebook page as soon as we've done a little processing. Feel free to leave any feedback you'd like. And if you have any questions about reaching Gahlord, that's easy enough to do. You can just leave some comments. We'll make sure if you have any questions or any of that. So, Gahlord, on behalf of the entire Dun & Bradstreet community here, I really want to thank you for joining us.
And thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Great. And I look forward to having you on a show in the future. Thanks again.
Sure. Peace out.